No, I'll keep it.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? We'll give it a couple minutes for people to start trickling in. I know it's lunchtime here in Nashville, Tennessee. Appreciate everyone on the West Coast getting up a little early and East Coast joining your early afternoon with us. So we'll give it about 2 more minutes until we get going.
Ryan, I think we need some music.
Yeah.
I was thinking that as I was driving in today, I'm like, what's everyone listening to right now? Laura, what is the top of your Spotify playlist?
Oh, what is the top of my Spotify playlist? I will listen to, like, I would say right now I've got the Top Line podcast, the SaaSter podcast, the SaaS Talk podcast, but that's sidebar. But I would say, like, jazz funk is like my kind of my go-to when I'm just hanging out at my computer and trying to get some work done and get the vibes going.
I love that. We have the lo-fi jazz on here at the Ambition office right now. Tom, what about you? What are we listening to if I get in the car with you?
I'm like a karaoke guy, so any song that I can like scream out loud by myself or with others. So I'm like really digging, like it's old school, but like the acoustic version of I'm a Creep. Like that was like the first song in the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie. My kids and I love Zombie from the Cranberries.
Definitely a classic. Make sure you and everyone else joining check out Ambition's sales conference in October at Peak. There will definitely be some karaoke going on. Chow, round us out. What are you listening to? And then we'll get into the webinar.
Yeah, I'm on my podcast phase right now. So I started listening to a podcast called Petty Crimes, where it's a true crime for non-illegal crime. So it's quite interesting. It's been fun. Keeps me entertained.
I love it. I love it. Well, cool. We will let's get started. So first off, I want to thank everybody joining us today for taking some time out of your day and hanging with us on this webinar. Hopefully, this is going to be a little different than every other webinar out there where everyone hops on and just talks about the same old thing for a little bit. We have some folks here that have some hot takes on performance management, some hot takes on performance reviews, and you're going to get some tactical things, tactical ideas that some of the leaders we have featured today are doing on the front lines right now in their orgs. I'm super excited to share that with you. So really the goal of today is to set out and answer the question, is performance management broken? I want to hear from you guys in the chat right now. Throw a 1 in the chat if you've been on a performance review at any point in your life and you hopped off of it and you thought to yourself, what was the point of that, right? Why did we just spend all of that time and talk about nothing? A ton of executives right now actually say their evaluation and feedback systems have no impact on performance. And some say they even have a negative effect, right? So we're going to answer questions around how do we reimagine, how do we rebuild, how do we reinvigorate a really critical coaching touch point. In order to do that, I'm excited to welcome our speakers today. We have a star-studded lineup of some really great thought leaders in the industry. And to get us going, I'll kick us off. I'm your moderator today. My name is Brian. I'm the Director of Sales Development here at Ambition. Calling in from Nashville, Tennessee, and definitely excited to get all the hot takes from the next 3 people that are going to do their intros. So LG, I'll hand it over to you. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your experience, and definitely plug Pavilion.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Well, super excited to be here today. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Laura Guerra. I also go by LG. I'm the VP of Growth at Pavilion, based out in Los Angeles, California. I've been in sales and sales leadership for 13 years at large global companies, small SaaS startups, and pretty much everything in between. I lead membership acquisition as well as our VC partnerships initiatives here at Pavilion. For those of you who aren't familiar or aren't currently members, we are the largest private community for B2B SaaS and tech go-to-market executives and their teams. So we help people build the knowledge, the skills, and the tools that they need to get where they want to go in their career. So we've got over 50 unique courses and schools, structured educational opportunities, starting for SDRs, CSMs, all the way up to the C-suite level, including our CRO school, CCO school, CMO school, which is taught by VCs and best-in-class operators, a number of events and industry conferences that we host, and all sorts of networking opportunities for you to build relationships with future employers and other connections to help you in your career. So I currently lead the sales and the CS organization here at Pavilion. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Tom.
Thank you for the invite, Brian. So for everyone on this webinar, my name is Tom Cherian. I'm the Director of Enablement and Ops here at Rattle. And Rattle, in a nutshell, we're a revenue automation engine. So we sit behind your sales tech stack, most notably with tools or platforms like Salesforce, Gong, you name it. And what we do is we help proactively push that data, those insights, right into Slack or Teams, so that we can help reps and leaders proactively coach, proactively de-risk deals, and really just make reps more productive in what they do, because last time I checked, it's like impossible to figure out what you need to do in Salesforce. So that's our value proposition, or our pitch in a nutshell. Clearbit actually is a customer, along with like Gong and G2, Vonage, LivePerson, and others. So that's what we are and what I am in a nutshell. I'm based in the New York area, so I don't know if anyone else is here in New York, but please let me know. And I think for anyone that's here or watching this on demand, feel free to add me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Chow, round us out.
Good to be here. So my name is Xiao. I am a senior revenue operations manager at Clearbit. If you don't know what Clearbit is, Clearbit provides B2B companies with basically the data foundation to kind of build and grow their business. We actually launched global data coverage this week, so it's really, really exciting. So feel free to check us out. My role really is to become business partners to our internal customers, which predominantly are the sales and customer success leaders. So what I do day to day really is to provide data and insights on a business level, department level, team level, as well as the IC level. So a lot of the work that I do really is to help drive business decisions. So pricing changes, for example, forecasting, and I think most importantly is the performance management side of things. So very, very excited to be here.
Thanks. One thing I'm really excited about is not only do these leaders run their own performance reviews and have their performance management processes in place, but the companies that they work for help all of you and all of the leaders out there run the same exact thing. So definitely should get some really good perspective and ideas. A couple slides here to frame us up, and then we'll drop the slides and we'll get into a pretty intimate chat with our three leaders. But I really wanted to frame up the conversation for the listeners today and give you some data and behind potentially why you joined us. So I'm sure most are familiar with Forrester, but they did a survey recently that polled back only 14% of employees strongly agree that performance reviews inspire them to improve. In fact, oftentimes annual performance reviews demotivate. They fail to account for the employee's opinion. They involve bias, and they really don't provide a why behind some of the things you ask when it comes to collaboration and teamwork. Leslie Jennings, who's works at Willis Towers Watson, had a quote that stuck out to us: "The performance management design itself is not evolving as quickly as the purpose that we have set out for what we want it to do. And really where that kind of leads us into is some data from McKinsey and Company. And these are going to be really the three prongs of the conversation today around our leaders. This was polled by 1,500 sales executives by McKinsey and Company, but basically they agreed that three practices must exist to carry out an effective performance management system. Those three things are linking performance goals to business priorities, coaching by managers, and then differentiating compensation. So that's kind of the frame up for the conversation today. And really where we're going to start is around how to implement these three key practices in your day-to-day. So one other quick slide to set us up, and then I'm going to shut up and you're going to get to hear from these awesome folks. So when it comes to that first bullet point, linking performance goals to business priorities, how do you help a new generation of quota-carrying employees see the bigger picture and purpose, right? In my mind, it's so important to communicate the why behind the numbers, the why behind the goals. Us as leaders understand these things need to align to OKRs, but every company is different within their transparency of why. And really the first question to kick us off, I'm going to send this over to LG. I know you have some hot takes. When talking about aligning performance goals to business priorities, what are some important things that people should keep in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and by the way, everyone, I'm a big fan of hot takes, but maybe it won't be so hot today because I know that before the webinar, Tom and I are aligned on at least one of these topics. So, but I think just to answer the first question that you posed to the group around like, are performance reviews broken? And my answer is it's a resounding yes, absolutely, for a couple different reasons, right? Number one, I think there's a lack of both direct but kind feedback, right? I always say that people should know exactly where they stand at any given time, right? Whether you are underperforming, whether you're doing okay in certain areas, you know what those areas are, you know what you need to work on and what to improve, or you're crushing it, right? But you know where you stand with your leadership, with your management team, just like with your partner at home, right? Like you know if things are going well and you know if things aren't, and you're having open dialogue about that on a consistent basis, not once a year, twice a year. The second reason is I think I've seen, and I've done this myself, right, and learned the hard way, is I think giving people vague feedback, right? I think we've all had this before where it's like, you need to improve your communication. You need to improve your strategic thinking. It's like, okay, what does that mean, right? And so, I've had to learn to be more prescriptive in, hey, you need to improve your cross-functional communication via your written communication to other departments when you're rolling out specific, projects or initiatives. And then lastly is I think, people give you feedback on what to improve, but then there's not really a lack of like, hey, let's develop a plan together on how you can actually develop those skills and work on that feedback. So just wanted to kind of like set the stage with, those are some of my reasons as to why performance management is broken. And then I think kind of going back to your original question, Brian, around linking performance reviews to business priorities and business objectives. At Pavilion, we use an OKR framework. So the executive leadership team will create quarterly OKRs. So just to give a specific example of what our Q2 OKRs were to kind of make this as tangible as possible for folks. It was improve the executive experience through local events and prescriptive insights, ideate, elevate, and scale Pavilion products, operational efficiency and growth within both membership and events. So those were our company objectives. And so my team objectives fall within that third, right? And so then each department creates their own OKRs. And then I have each of my reps create OKRs that tie into the growth team OKRs. And mine obviously falls within the company OKRs. So that is kind of how we as an organization link, right, somebody's specific performance to, right, the department objectives, which are then linked to the organizational objectives on a quarterly basis. So it's very clear, and there's a lot of alignment across, vertically and horizontally across, why those objectives are the way they are, and what each individual can do to contribute to that. So.
Man, thank you for that. I love hearing like the actual OKRs that are going on over there. I think another thing that stands out to me, you use the word communication a lot. I think when our reps are coming to performance reviews or coming into, you know, kind of a serious conversation, they should feel comfortable and empowered to communicate what, you know, what they need to us as well. And we need to make sure the stage is set that way. So creating, you know, kind of that roadmap to get there is super helpful. Chow, from the lens of the full life cycle of the customer, how is Clearbit looking at the same concept, but more so on the customer side of the business?
Yeah, I think building off of what LG's mentioned so far, you know, aligning business objective all the way down to the ICs, like one of the key objectives we have this quarter is customer retention. So we've made huge changes to align what that means on every level and how each role plays a part in customer retention, from product all the way down to you know, our SDRs. So historically, on the Clearbit side, our SDRs and BDRs are responsible for generating new business pipeline. But with this, you know, customer retention as our goal, we've switched out the way that their workflows are so that they can help us re-engage customers that are a little bit less engaged and, you know, higher risk of churn, so that we use their kind of expertise in helping us retain customers as well. So even our SEs have goals that are tied to customer retention. So we're able to align, as I think we'll talk about this a little bit as well, like compensation to the priorities, so that each person plays a role in the company objective. So we have our SEs not just do pre-sales calls, but they actually have a book that they work with, and they're comped on expansion of within that book. So every single role has been realigned so that their day-to-day, their metrics and their comp directly ties or like directly impacts customer retention.
Yeah, it's super helpful. I think one thing that you hear now, both with Chow and Laura, is this cross-functional communication, right? Often teams can be siloed, and if, you know, goals and customer success are affected by sales, right? Sales goals are affected by the top of funnel demand motion. So like that cross-functional communication is super important. Tom, give us your, just to give the audience a note, as we're hopping on here 15 minutes early, Tom had some hot takes on performance management. So kick us off there, your thoughts on performance management, and then anything you have to add here in the vein of linking performance goals to business priorities.
I hate performance management. I mean, I just hate the term of it. All right, like think about it, right? Like you're already creating anxiety. You're already creating stress, both for the person who has to give the performance management review and the person who has to receive it. I think, you know, in context, it obviously depends on like what stage in a company you're in, right? So, you know, Rattle's very much a startup company. There's about like 60 to 70 employees. So do we need like a formal process and rank all employees like in a single spreadsheet or whatever? Probably not now. You know, for a Fortune 500 company with tens of thousands of employees, like how does the, you know, how do the different leaders like know like what's their strongest versus weakest talent, right? Like in that context, that makes sense, right? But you know, if we're thinking about it just in terms of like a philosophy or process, like, hey, how do we give feedback to this person to make them better, right? And again, when I think about performance reviews, I think about it in the most traditional sense, like it happens annually or biannually. Like it's not helpful, right? And I also think about it in the lens of like, you know, like from an enablement perspective, I'm supporting, you know, and everyone's supporting like the reps at the end of the day, right? And yes, we have OKRs, but a rep is not necessarily measured on the OKR. They're measured on like, hey, did I hit my target for the month? Did I hit my target for the quarter? So I'll share this funny story where when I was a rep at this company many, many moons ago, and I spent over a decade in sales before jumping into enablement. I remember my manager giving me, and I'll never forget this. Like, I don't know why I can remember this now, because this was like more than 10 years ago. My manager gave me a performance review, And one of them was on like renewals. And he's like, Tom, you're like a 2 out of 5 on renewals. And I'm like, dude, you're crazy. You literally just gave me an award for having the highest renewals globally within the company. So how are you giving me like probably the lowest score on this? So I think like that's the other thing, like we just need to be mindful of, like maybe performance reviews can be something more than just like metrics that you've hit. I mean, you can literally run that at any time, but maybe the performance reviews can be more on the softer things, like on product knowledge, product mastery. Did this person volunteer to take any like leadership, projects or cross-functional projects within the company, right? Especially, a lot of people, they want to get promoted or move from one team to another, et cetera. Like you want to look for those softer things too, and maybe use the performance like the performance review to maybe evaluate for those things, where on the revenue side of the house, it's, just run the report in Salesforce. Boom, there's my, here's my contribution to the business at the end of the day. So that's my hot take on that, if I could steal LG's phrase there. And then what was the second part of your question, Brian?
Yeah, I would just say anything you have to add when it comes to actually linking those OKRs and performance goals, the performance goals of your reps to your business priorities and OKRs. Any other thoughts on that topic?
I would say just on that topic, because again, OKRs can seem like very broad and non-specific. And, if you're an SDR in the company, you're probably thinking like, how am I actually contributing to some of these OKRs outside of just my day job, which is to like book meetings and drive pipeline? So OKRs only work if leadership or the frontline manager can provide like the actual tactical path and guidance on how to contribute to those other OKRs, right? But if you're not showing them how to do it, because again, like it's easy to pick on SDRs because they're typically young in their careers and they don't know what they don't know. And at the end of the day, in their purview, if they're being beaten up or focused 99% of the time on just booking meetings, like it's not conscious for them to be thinking about these other OKRs. So it's leadership's responsibility to show them the path, right? This is what you can be doing, or this is what you're already doing that impacts these other OKR goals and objectives. But if they're unable to tie it back, then it's not fair to hold them accountable to, did you impact these OKRs or not?
That's a perfect segue. That's a perfect segue into our next topic, right? Over here at Ambition, coaching is how we believe you get there, right? That consistent quality coaching moment between a manager and a rep, in my mind, is pivotal, right? That's where you get the buy-in. Your reps understand what they're doing. They upskill. They want to drive towards those revenue goals because they understand them, right? If those interactions are quality and your manager is keeping your frontline rep in the loop on the why and helping them get there, revenue is going to come, and obviously that's what the business wants. Sadly, though, if you have a flyby one-on-one and a manager checks in with you and you're good to go, and yep, that's it, right? They hop off. It's a 5-minute session, or maybe it doesn't even happen. Reps can go the opposite way, right? They can lose focus. You can lose the buy-in of some of your top reps if you just assume they know what's going on. And I think, coaching by managers needs to evolve, right? We need to evolve that role of the manager. They truly are a force multiplier in your organization, whether you're a 70-person startup or a 1,000-person sales force. So LG, to kind of kick us off here, I know you believe strongly about systems, right? When it comes to coaching and performance management. Can you share with the audience some ways that your sales team systematically coach and drive their performance management?
Yeah, absolutely. So we could probably have a full webinar just on coaching, because this is my favorite topic to speak about. But I think that as it relates to coaching and the performance reviews, right? Your coaching system is the input. Like the performance review is just it to me, right? Hot take, it's just a formality, right? What is going to make the biggest impact in your reps' development and their results is your coaching system. And so I think, first and foremost, most leaders think that they are great coaches. And I know I was a top rep, my team, I am a great coach. And I had some pretty eye-opening moments and feedback from my reps when I first started managing, where I learned like, wow, I'm not quite as great of a coach as I thought I was. And so the reason why is because most people confuse training with coaching or telling with coaching, right? And so it's super important for us to teach our teams the difference between those things, right? And so if we're getting, our team in a Zoom room and we're reviewing gong calls and we're saying, hey, you could have done this better, you could have done that better, or you're in a one-on-one with a rep and you're saying, okay, I need you to focus on multi-threading, I need you to reach out to the CMO, the CRO, and the head of enablement, that's not coaching. Right? It's valuable, right? It's helpful. It's a good learning moment, but that is not coaching, right? If we think about sports, right? Watching game tapes, that's important. That's an important part of the process. But what's most important is the behavior change, the opportunities that we're providing to drive behavior change with our reps, right? Which is like, hey, so I actually I had an SDR a few companies ago that I was managing. I was like, yeah, they're not ramping fast enough. I'm gonna have to put them on a PIP. And my mentor at the time was like, well, how much coaching are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm giving them the same amount of coaching as everyone else. They're just not getting it fast enough. So I implemented 2 15-minute sessions each week with this person where we just practiced. That's all we did. So in 15 minutes, all they did was repeat the cold call coconut over and over and over until they were like, and I was like, this is gonna sound silly. It's gonna feel stupid. But the goal is that when someone picks up the phone after ringing for 30 minutes, when they catch you off guard, you're going to have so much confidence because you have just done this over and over and over and over in our coaching sessions. And so we would do that for every single part of, a cold call, for example, right? So I think that's kind of my tip number one is like within your operating system, do you have specific coaching, time allocated for coaching, which is separate from deal strategy, which is separate from your forecast calls and so forth. Kind of the second system, right, is like, okay, do you have an objective scorecard, right, for measuring cold calls, demos, or whatnot, right? Do you have, if you're empowering your team leads to provide feedback, and hopefully you are empowering the rest of the team to give feedback, it's not just all coming from, the manager or the VP. Do you have an objective way to assess? So that's number 2. And then number 3, right, having a system for measuring performance. I've used Ambition in the past. I've used spreadsheets. I've used Gong. Like there's lots of different tools that you can use, but having a system to, track the feedback, measure progress over time. So.
Yeah, I think all that contributes to, at the top, your hot take of the performance review being a formality, right? All of those different coaching moments are the steps of the path to get to that. So when you get to that formality, you have tangible, like Tom said earlier, soft behavior skill you can talk about. You have real world data, and you really understand what that person needs, right? At the end of the day, it's our jobs to make sure our reps are the most they can be. So I think that those systems allow you to do that. So yeah, that was super helpful. Xiao, I know your team recently has put a lot of work into starting up quarterly QBRs with your reps. Curious how your process here may be similar or different to LG's.
Yeah. So I think because I don't do any of the coaching, I'm the person who in the background that provides the data to do that. We do it in 2 ways. So firstly, yes, we do have QBRs. It's kind of been a journey and kind of building out what a effective QBR looks like. So of course, there's the data of like, how did you do in the last quarter? How did it compare to the previous quarter? But what we want the reps to derive out of it is, how do I plan my path to quota this quarter? Are we doing better? Am I doing better on the outbound piece? Am I getting more success selling this type of product? And with that in mind, kind of your pipeline, because we also do, I think 70% of our QBR is really focused on the future, like how is your quarter going to be planned out? With the data that you have from last quarter and how your performance is. What's my conversion rate? How do I do that? How many opportunities do I need to get to my quota? that's where we focus the bulk of our time. And the data that we provide on the RevOps team is to help them do that. I think the second piece is a more live view. So I think it's right in the sense that we can't have, reviews every 6 months. It needs to be something that's constant. So we start rolling out leaderboards within the orgs. So with the reps, they're naturally quite competitive. They always want to be number one, and that's been really quite helpful in getting them to engage with like, how well am I doing in comparison to my peers? And of course, they get equipped with their personal dashes as well. So like relating back to what we talked about previously is we care about retention a lot. On their dashes, they have their own retention rates. How do I actually impact the company goal? And that helps their conversations, one-on-ones with their managers on like, okay, I seem to be tracking well here, or I'm kind of struggling here. Where can my manager plug in, and where can I get help to help me get to that path to quota? But really the focus on our end is helping them chart out what their plan of attack is for the quarter, and not so much like you didn't do so well here. And it's more, how do we get there?
Yeah, there's a theme here of measuring twice and hitting once, and I think that definitely is ringing true. Tom, I'm pretty curious with your perspective, right, experience in sales and enablement, right? I'm really curious to hear your viewpoint on coaching.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm in agreement with all the speakers here, in terms of the strategies that has been shared. I would say, like I'll just share this personal story. So I'll shout him out. I don't know if you probably want to listen to this. His name's Patrick. He was my first and probably my best manager that I ever had, having worked at Gartner. And what he did with me when I started, and I was an account executive at Gartner. He asked me like not what I need help coaching in, or any kind of sales training, whatever. He asked me like what are you trying to achieve in life? Like what's your personal motivation? And I shared with him like, look, I just got married, or I'm going to get married. Like my wife has over 100K in debt. I have over 60K in debt. Like I need to pay this off. Like this is stressing me out. Like awesome. And he was able to use that as a way to motivate me and show me the path of like, hey, if you do this much in discos, if you do this much in demos, if you the average deal size here is about this much, so and our win rates are this, so if you could generate this much in pipeline, like here's your path to paying off this debt, in 1 to 2 years. And it's no secret, I had to do more than 100% in order to pay it off. And the scary thing, reflecting on it, is that in less than 2 years, I was able to be debt-free for my wife and I in terms of all of our student loans. So, I think from a coaching perspective, like we just need to step back as humans and think like, what are the, like, why is, the person that I'm coaching, like, why are they here? Why are they on this team? What's motivating them to do well, right? Is it personal? Are they trying to pay off some student loan debt, a mortgage? Are they trying to go to grad school? Are they trying to actually maybe be a manager or maybe shift to another team? When I was a manager at a previous company, I had someone on my team saying like, they actually aspired to be actually in product, like as a product manager and product marketing. I'm like, great. There's no ego on my end. Let's figure out a way to get you on that team. And if it's not here at this company, somewhere else. Right? Because that's, coaching should also, it should lead to like employee happiness, right? Because even if they're leaving your company for a different or better opportunity somewhere else, like they can be a future customer, they could be a future prospect or a future advocate or champion. So those are the other dimensions I think about when it comes to coaching. Because on the flip side, you could just have like a really shitty manager, a really shitty coach. You may end up leaving, people don't quit companies at the end of the day, right? Like they quit their managers. And you may potentially be losing out on a future prospect or a future customer or a future champion down the road. Like what I would love to see happen is that person leaving your company or our company and they end up being that champion, if not at that company, then for others, and being that positive sphere of influence or that positive ambassador. So like, that's why I'm more than confident to shout out my old manager and shout out my old employer, Gartner, because they were able to help me achieve those personal and professional goals in life. So that's what I think about when it comes to like being an effective coach. Like, let's just go down to the basics and let's tie it back to those intrinsic or extrinsic motivators. And then from there, build out like that coaching plan and what success looks like in the short and long term.
Yeah, I love that story. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, it sounds like Patrick was an amazing manager, Tom. So yeah, that's a great story. And I think just to underscore what Tom was mentioning, I know Xiao mentioned that she has a lot of competitive reps, and I think most of us have those folks on our teams. But I one of my top reps at Pavilion, he had a record-breaking quarter, 200+% quota, made more commission, I mean, it was just mind-boggling how successful his quarter was. And in the performance review, I was excited to do his performance review. I was going to say, hey, you're going to get a promotion, but your quota's going up. And he actually asked me before we even had the conversation, like, LG, learned a lot this quarter, had a lot of fun. I know this might sound like an unusual request, but I actually would prefer a lower quota and to make less. I'm happy to make less money for a lower quota because I just don't want the stress. And so it was a like a learning moment for me. Like, not everyone is motivated by money. Everyone has different motivations, and understanding that and tapping into that, and then operationalizing that, right? Which is like once a quarter having like a personal development review, or like in my one-on-one docs, I would have like, what's the professional goal of the quarter, your personal goal of the quarter, like run a marathon, whatever it is. But that was just like a really interesting learning moment for me that, yeah, everyone has different intrinsic or extrinsic motivations. So.
Yeah, and I think the thing here too, a lot of people don't realize is that frontline manager isn't empowered or enabled to do all these things, right? Imagine, right, the systems that Laura, Xiao, and Tom are talking about, plus the human aspect. Now multiply that by 6 to sometimes 15 people that one person's managing. Us as revenue leaders need to do a better job of making sure those frontline managers that have to balance all of that are able to do a good job. So, all right, we're gonna come up for air before we get into the last bullet point. I know there was a lot. I want to make sure y'all are still with us. I'm from Buffalo, New York. We eat chicken wings with one thing the right way. Put a 1 in the chat if you're a blue cheese person. Put a 2 in the chat if you're a ranch person. At the end, the person that puts the right number, y'all are gonna get special content sent to you. Put the wrong answer, well, too bad. All right, glad everyone's still with us. Let me share my screen and we'll move into kind of the last bullet point, and then we'll have some rapid fire kind of takes for the panelists, and we should have some time at the end to field some questions from y'all. I know there's a lot of systems and processes and things. Don't worry about taking notes. We'll have this recording for you as well. We're in sales, right? Everybody's favorite topic, and really something that comes up in a performance review. It comes up in those conversations, and that is compensation, right? So I'm going to kick it over to Xiao. Aligning compensation to the desired outcomes is easier said than done, right? If you have nuance to your sales process with many people involved, it can be really difficult. And I know over at Clearbit, you guys have a lot of hands involved in your process. What are some methods or strategies that have worked well for you in the past when it comes to aligning compensation?
Yeah, I think it's just building off of what you said, like there are just so many people involved in getting it across the line, getting a happy customer as well. So for the same sales process, we want to be, I guess, compensating or acknowledging the roles that play the different parts in that process. I think I mentioned earlier before, we have now our BDRs also booking meetings with customers. It's directly tied to customer retention. They get comped on that. We have obviously our AEs on bookings, but when our AEs book an expansion opportunity, for example, we also comp the CSM because it's due to their relationship building that we're able to expand our customers. So even though it's on one single opportunity, it's really important for us to acknowledge the importance of the different roles to get it across the line. And that's been quite successful this quarter and kind of getting us to our goal. And that also makes everybody want to work with each other. I think that's really critical. We don't want to be in a situation where like, oh, I'm the CSM, I'm expanding, like instead of the AEs, we want both of them to be working together for one single company goal. So that's a big change we've made on the Clearbit side that's been quite successful. So
definitely. LG, I don't want to overuse the word hot take here, but I'm going to. I know you have some strong feelings about this. What would you add?
Yes. So my hot take on comp is that I think everyone says compensation drives behavior. Compensation drives behavior. My perspective is that compensation actually doesn't drive behavior. Culture drives behavior, and behavior is driven internally, right? From someone's internal desires, motivations, what we just talked about. I think strong leadership and a fair and equitable comp plan is obviously table stakes. It's important. But what I mean by culture, it's the energy you show, it's the way you communicate, it's what you tolerate, it's how you set expectations, the outcomes you reward. And so just to get a little bit more granular, something that I always do on my teams is like week one, when we onboard someone, there's a presentation around growth team values and expectations. Values, expectations, and promotion criteria. It's about maybe 15 slides or so, and it reviews the activity expectations across each role. So if I'm an SDR, I can see what AEs are, what AEs are required to do. I can see what CSMs are required to do, and I can see the way that all of those teams are supposed to work together. I see the behavioral expectations, right? Camera on during meetings. You're on time to meetings. Salesforce is filled out every week, right? Some of those things that are expected that drive accountability and great cultures, but we that sometimes come up in performance reviews, but we don't necessarily talk about them on a regular basis. And by the way, if you haven't done this with your teams, like there's no time like the present. You can still implement something like this and review it on a regular basis with an existing team if you're not hiring. But I will say that we just implemented, and I say this because my CSMs at Pavilion, I actually just yesterday rolled out variable compensation for the first time. So the CSMs were not on a variable compensation plan at all. And every single quarter with them not being on variable comp, we've been able to increase our gross dollar retention rates, right? Through just training, coaching, education, some spiffs. So we decided it was time to implement this, but it was just an interesting learning of like, it wasn't compensation alone that drove us to increase our renewal rates, right? Now I'm hoping that it'll be an accelerant to our growth and to our renewal rates. As Xiao mentioned earlier, there's a big focus on customer retention and expansion. But yeah, so that's my perspective on that. And then the only other thing I would say is like, I think that what I did implement into that CS comp plan is 25% of the on-target variable is on what I'm calling discretionary KPIs. So I think in this economy, I've seen certain instances of, companies bringing their teams on board Pavilion. They love Pavilion, they love the courses, they're doing all the things, adoption is high, and they're like, we just laid off half of our team, we have to contract, right? That's extremely unmotivating for a CSM who's done all the right things. And so baking in part of the comp plan where, that leaves space to motivate, folks that are doing all the right things, even though, in certain ways that the outcomes, are impacted by the macroeconomic environment.
Yeah, man, that's so interesting. I think I'm definitely excited to kick it to Tom now, because his story earlier really talked about how, in my mind, maybe I heard him wrong, but comp motivated you in that part of your career in Gartner. So like, as you think about it again from the lens of a seller and leader now, like how do you think about compensation when it comes to driving really the performance of a team?
I mean, I guess a few things, but I think foundationally it just has to be simple, right? Like if I need a PhD or a data science degree to figure out how much I'm going to get paid at the end of the quarter or at the end of the year, then I don't think you have a good comp plan. Now, of course, there's a million ways to create a comp plan and incentivize, maybe different business units, different products, the different things you're trying to push or protect, or or to be mindful of. Like, I totally agree with Laura. Like 2023, like every company has to deal with like contraction. So is that like regrettable revenue, like a regrettable churn, or unregrettable churn? Right? Was this like, could we have prevented this? No, like they laid off half the company. Like, should that hurt the rep? That's not fair. Versus, a company maybe switching to a competitor or whatever. But that being said, I just feel like as a seller, I just want to be able to understand my comp plan, because from an enablement standpoint, I want to be able to enable reps and show them how hard you need to work or how hard you don't need to work to not hit your number, to hit your number, to exceed your number. Right? So if they can take their comp plan and tie that back to their existing book of business in terms of like, hey, these are the existing logos in my book of business. These are the new logos in my book of business. So if I drive this much in expansion, if I drive this much in new, this is how I'm going to hit my number for the month, for the quarter, for the year. Then I can coach to it. But if the comp plan is like uncoachable because it is this disgusting Google Sheet calculator, then it's not helping anyone. So in a perfect world, your comp plan is a coaching tool to help drive those behaviors. But I think, again, to my last point, like start with the basics, right? Like, why is my rep here? What are they trying to achieve personally? What are they trying to achieve professionally? And then use the comp plan as the mechanism, like where, hey, if I'm trying to make 250K this year, awesome, right? Who am I as a manager to not want you to hit that number? So based on this comp plan, these are the numbers you need to hit across your new business and across your existing business to get you there. And if reps are not clear today on what they need to do that, then hopefully for everyone on this webinar or who are watching this on demand, right? Like, holy shit, I better go back and enable to that. Or maybe we need to like simplify our comp plan or add those nuances or complexities to our comp plan so people can achieve what they want to achieve and drive the right behaviors and levers within our business that we can control.
That makes me think about LG's point of the person that isn't motivated by comp, right? Think about that person looking at a comp plan that's super difficult. They're probably just going to give up on it and kind of motivate themselves on their own and drive towards their own kind of outcome. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, we're coming into the last 10 minutes. We have some rapid fire questions for our panelists, and then we will have a little bit of time left for Q&A. Tom, I'm going to keep it here with you. For the audience and then the folks that listen on demand, what is your top tip for how we can evolve the annual performance review?
Don't do it annually. Why do you have to wait one time a year to do a performance review? And what's the point anyway of doing it once a year, right? So can we do it monthly? Can we do it quarterly, right? I think frequency doesn't hurt. So what are we actually trying to achieve with the performance review anyway? Like, is this an HR thing? Or is this a sales motivation thing? Is this to help our leaders understand like our top talent and get a pulse on like, do we have retention issues or opportunities to promote within the org? So, I think this is kind of like this one-all catch-all kind of tool, which again, for bigger companies I get, but I think about the critical issues like you as a company have, and what are you trying to achieve with this performance review? Like, are you doing it because someone else told you to do it? Like, and we've just, I think in the history of, at least in America, we've been doing this for decades, if not hundreds of years. So what are we really trying to achieve with this? And if it's not achieving it, great, let's just call that out and collectively figure out like where do we actually want to be? Like what kind of insights do we actually want to capture between direct report and manager so that we can make better people decisions, business decisions, etc.
Yeah, if you're going through the motions just to go through the motions, just stop. I love
Right.
that. I love
Yeah.
that point. Ciao.
Top tip. I think very similar to what Tom said, like frequency. I think we're gonna lean in towards like these live leaderboards now, to kind of provide the view right now, and I think that's what we're gonna lean into.
I agree. Simple and to the point. LG, round us out. Top tip for how we can evolve.
Top tip is we need to be enabling our leaders on how to write effective performance reviews, whether it's monthly, quarterly, annually, if it's, in your, HRIS, or if it's just on a Google Doc that you're sharing, it needs to be thoughtful, complete sentences, very thorough with specific examples. Because if you as a manager are writing a couple bullet points and bullshitting your way through the performance review, your team is not going to take you seriously, right? And so if your team knows that you are holding yourself accountable to become prepared with specific examples, and that you put ample amount of time into, accurately assessing their performance, they are going to take your feedback seriously and implement it. It's I can't tell you how many times I've been personally given a couple bullet points, or I think John mentioned this earlier. You're doing great, right? Like someone clearly didn't put a ton of thought into that specific review, and so just take the time and be thoughtful, and make sure that over the course of the month, quarter, you have a system for writing down and keeping track of stories, examples, success moments to then share on that review.
Yeah, nothing is more defeating than going into one of those and you can tell you're more prepared than your manager. Man, I think all of us have been there and experienced that. And as a revenue leader, think about how you felt in the past when one of your not so great managers didn't take the time. It's really deflating. So I think that's a really good call out. Man, I want to make sure we have some time for questions. So we're going to skip the last rapid fire question, and we're going to open it up to the audience for some Q&A. I think I believe we have around 5 minutes left. So if you have a question for any one of our leaders, let's type them in the chat and we'll get ripping through those. If it's to a specific leader, definitely call it out. But if it's to the group, we would love to field some questions here before we hop. We'll give it like a minute for folks to type. I think the blue cheese ranch question threw everybody off. Everyone's just thinking about lunch now. Cool. All right, we'll give it 10 more seconds, and then if not, man, I'll say this. I think in wrapping this up, probably some of the questions some folks may have could be relatively sensitive, right? We're talking about like a pretty like the backbone of the process of your sales org. And I definitely would not feel comfortable maybe asking some questions if my process is broken, but I'll be the first to call out all the leaders on this call, whether you want to email us or hit us up on LinkedIn after. We're definitely more than happy to field those questions privately. I did see a question come in from Brandy. As a startup company, where should we start with gauging reviews? Who wants to take that one?
I can jump in. It's a good question. I think one thing we're mindful of here at Rattle is like as a startup, especially as like a Series A startup, like everybody's asked to do a lot with a little. So I know like with my manager and how I connect with other employees, like I'm just trying to feel burnout. Right. I think that's maybe also like thematic of 2023, like just doing a lot with a little. But again, like that's a critical issue for us. And I imagine, with any startup, with any company, like you may have other things you want to be mindful of. So I think, again, just figure out like what the critical issue is, like you're trying to get a pulse on or solve for, right? Like, hey, we want to recognize and reward everyone by, let's say, December, or by the end of July or August, mid-year. Like, who are we promoting, right? Let's get a pulse on that. Or, hey, let's get a pulse on employee sanity and mental health. Do we need to give everyone a day off? Do we need to treat everyone out, right? At Rattle, we're doing an offsite in a few weeks in Chicago. Not to beat everyone up on training, but just this is our time and opportunity to like recognize and reward, and just what everyone really needs is like a structured break.
Yes to everything Tom said. And then I would also just add that I think, the same way that we hold our teams to high expectations and we're giving them performance reviews, we also are sending out, I believe we switched from quarterly to biannually now, ENPS surveys, right? And so we are also seeking feedback, both at the leadership level, company level, leadership level, and we actually do one specifically on the executive leadership team to get feedback on how we're doing. So I think, again, that 360 feedback and just starting somewhere, and Brandy, happy to, if you, for anyone who wasn't comfortable sharing a question, like I know we're all three of us are on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out to any of us with specific questions, and happy to share, certain resources and in what we're doing. But I think it's just implementing, I would say at the company level, performance reviews, and then again, some of these one-on-one and developing systems on whether it's a monthly or quarterly basis, while also capturing feedback. And again, like Tom mentioned, some of the feedback we're getting right now as well is about burnout. And so we're also doing an offsite actually next week, which is very different than our historical offsites around training, skill development. It's really just like, hey, let's collaborate. Let's do some big hairy goal brainstorming on whiteboards and play, do s'mores and all that fun stuff. So
Drink.
And drink. Yes.
Drink.
Man, it was a pleasure. Coming up on time now. Like LG said, if you do have questions, you're going to be able to reach out to us on LinkedIn or via email after this. I think, I want to thank LG, Xiao, and Tom for taking their time out of their day, being vulnerable, right? Talking about real tactical stuff they're doing behind the curtain. Hopefully you got some raw, uncut ideas that you can run and take into your day and make a positive impact on the way you performance manage. Maybe you're going to be canceling your performance reviews next week because they fall into that bucket that Tom classified as don't do them, right? If you don't have a good reason behind it. So to our panelists, thank you so much for spending some time with us. To the audience, really appreciate you all as well. If you need anything, reach out. And if not, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, y'all. Have a good rest of the day.